Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the steam-drenched quiet of Edo-period Japan, where bathing was not just about hygiene, it was about knowing your place in society. Imagine this. The rain has been falling steadily for hours, a soft hiss on the paper screens, and you're sloshing through narrow alleys in wooden sandals that are one sneeze away from snapping in half. You're soaked, cold, and just want to soak your feet in something warm. You find the local Sento, a humble neighborhood bathhouse, its wooden sign creaking in the wind. A curl of steam escapes through the slatted windows. It smells like cedar, sulfur, and something that might be pickled daikon. You sigh in relief, but slow down. This is where things get tricky. You're about to walk into a place where everyone knows the rules except you. And trust me, you probably won't survive this. Socially. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from a futon in Tokyo or a hammock in Costa Rica, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing where we're dreaming from tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge up the narrow steps and reach the small wooden genkin, an entryway space just inside the door. There's no one around, just the squeak of wet wood beneath your feet and the smell of damp straw. You're immediately greeted with a challenge that seems simple but is, in fact, a full-blown historical minefield. Shoes. Edo period etiquette dictated an entire hierarchy based on how and where you left your footwear. Getas to the side. Zoris lined up neatly. If you're a commoner, don't even think about leaving them centered on the mat like some kind of daimyo in disguise. You do just that, of course. A tiny old man in a towel glances down, then raises one eyebrow like you've just announced your intention to marry his daughter. Not a word is said. Just judgment. Silent, scalding judgment. You bow, too low actually, which makes it worse, and quickly readjust your sandals like you've been trained since birth. No one buys it. You shuffle forward, hearing the whisper-soft rustle of the norin, a thick fabric curtain split vertically. This too is part of the ritual. In some parts of Japan, the color of the norin announced who could pass. Blue for men, red for women. But in Edo, the pattern and fading of the curtain told a quiet tale. A well-worn curtain hinted at a beloved, often-used bathhouse. A pristine one? Probably new or just unpopular. You instinctively touch it on your way through. That's a no-no. You're not supposed to manhandle it like it's a bead curtain from a 1970s kitchen. Inside, the air wraps around you like a warm blanket left too close to a rice cooker. Steam hangs heavy. Wood creaks underfoot. You're not alone. Never alone. This is not a private spa. It's a public arena for judgment, gossip, relaxation, and low-key spiritual renewal. And everyone can see you're new. There's an old saying from the time, "You are not clean until you have bathed with your neighbors." Which sounds charming until you realize your neighbors are eyeing your socks and quietly ranking your entire family line based on them. Mainstream historians agree that bathhouses were among the most democratizing spaces in Edo life. Rich or poor, artisan or samurai, everyone got naked here, sort of an equalizer via nudity. But, and here's the twist, this equality came with an asterisk. Because once your clothes were off, your manners had to speak for you. There's still some academic debate about just how much interaction went on between classes inside the bath. Some scholars argue it was a rare moment of social fluidity, where a merchant might rub shoulders with a minor noble without consequence. Others insist that the unspoken rules of deference, posture, and eye contact kept hierarchies firmly in place, even without robes to reinforce them. And yet, here you are, hovering near the changing area, unsure whether to fold your clothes or just stuff them in the corner like a rebellious ronin. You do both somehow. A little boy runs past, laughing. He's carrying a bamboo bucket that's technically reserved for adults. Scandalous. A grandmother clicks her tongue, not at him, but at you for letting it happen. Yes, you are now complicit in bucket crime. Everything is designed to guide behavior without overt instruction. If you're from out of town or say 300 years in the future, it's all baffling. Why are towels folded that way? Why is everyone pretending not to notice the man with the faded dragon tattoo? The deeper truth? These rules created a space that was less about the bath itself and more about belonging. You didn't just clean your body here, you scrubbed off the day, your status, your worries, and replaced them with the feeling that you were, if only for a little while, in sync with the rhythms of your town. You haven't even touched the water yet. And already you've learned, the bathhouse isn't just a place. It's a language. One you don't speak. Yet. You finally managed to slide your sandals into the correct corner, nod awkwardly at a man with precisely oiled sideburns, and make your way inside. But your next test, oh yes, there's always another, is sitting right there on the wooden floor. The footwear rack. Yes, another footwear rack. Because the first one was for outside shoes, and this one's for your indoor slippers. You don't have any. You glance around, hoping maybe there's a bin labeled Clueless Traveler or Loner Zori for lost souls. There isn't. One of the attendants gives you a look that manages to say, "You're wearing outside energy in here," without speaking a single syllable. So, barefoot it is. Your toes curl on the cold slats of polished cypress. You hope that counts as humility. In Edo-Era Japan, social cues often lived in the tiniest things, like shoes. And not just what kind of shoes, but where you placed them, how aligned they were, and whether they were new or worn. Historians have even found records of sumptuary laws regulating footwear, because of course they did. If you were a farmer, for instance, you weren't supposed to wear lacquered sandals. That was for artisans. Or maybe minor officials. The point is, your feet were telling a story long before your mouth ever opened. You make it to the changing area, a wide room with baskets along one wall, and the soft smell of hinoki wood all around. There are other bathers here already. One is humming a tune that may or may not be a critique of your folded robe. You place your clothes into a woven bamboo basket and notice, belatedly, that the person next to you has artfully folded theirs into a perfect rectangle that looks museum grade. You try. Yours ends up looking like a crumpled rice ball with buttons. Someone sneezes. 3 heads turn, not at the sneezer, but at the slipper rack. It's not aligned. There's one sandal sticking out, just barely, like a lazy tooth in an otherwise straight smile. A man in his 70s gets up with effort to fix it. This is what respectability looks like here. Straight slippers and quiet shame. As you prepare to enter the bathing chamber, a small painted sign catches your eye. It's an image of 2 pairs of sandals, one facing in, one facing out. A reminder, probably, that the way you turn your shoes isn't just habit, it's intention. Facing in means I'm staying. Facing out means I'm leaving. You think back. Yours are facing left, like politically neutral sandals? Probably not the right message. There's still some debate among historians about whether every bathhouse strictly enforced these visual customs, or if some were more relaxed, especially in poorer districts. Some accounts describe freewheeling bathhouses where people laughed, sang, even shared sake while soaking. Others paint a picture of quiet formality and solemn steam. The truth? Likely somewhere in between. It all depended on the neighborhood, and the owner. And, oh, the owners. Bathhouse proprietors in Edo weren't just janitors with big tubs. They were social referees. If someone broke a rule, left their slippers twisted, used another person's towel, or talked too loudly, the Yuya, bathhouse owner, might issue a warning. Or worse, a polite public suggestion that you try another establishment more suited to your ways. That's Edo speak for "your band, buddy." You step into the next room where steam drifts through latticed windows and the wet warmth hugs you, like a mother who just found out you forgot to write. It's comforting and judgmental. Both. The floor is slightly damp and your feet make that soft, squeaky sound with each step. Around you, men of all ages shuffle toward their preferred corners. An elderly man lifts a small stool and places it just so beside a wooden bucket. He glances at you and then at the stool beside you. It's the only one left. And it's cracked. You hesitate. Is this a trap? The bathhouse stool, small, backless, usually cedar, isn't just a seat. It's a statement. In some areas, sitting on another person's preferred stool, especially without washing it first, was considered worse than interrupting a no performance with a kazoo. It's personal, intimate, like using someone else's toothbrush, but in front of 10 steaming witnesses. You pick up the cracked stool. A moment passes. No one gasps. Crisis averted. Still, you notice how everyone else seems to know the rhythm. Place the stool, fill the bucket, rinse twice, soap, scrub, rinse again, and then, only then, approach the sacred bath. You, on the other hand, are standing there like you're trying to remember the plot of an old dream. A man nearby whistles softly. His sandals were the neat ones, of course they were. And this is the genius of Edo bathhouse design. It wasn't just a place to clean yourself, it was a place to observe others, to learn through mimicry and silence. The elder bathers rarely spoke. They didn't need to. Their rituals were sermons, their folded towels, parables. You, young grasshopper, are still very much in the footnote phase. One curious fringe record from a travel diary mentions that some upscale bathhouses actually employed a slipper boy, a young attendant whose only job was to arrange and polish footwear, ensuring everyone's social signals were pristine. Is that historically confirmed? Not fully. Historians still argue whether this was a regional quirk or the fantasy of a fussy samurai with slippery socks. You glance back, wondering if anyone has rearranged your abandoned sandals. They haven't. But someone has stacked another basket neatly on top of yours. A message? A threat? Probably just tidiness. But in this world, tidiness speaks louder than warnings. You sit, finally, on your little cracked throne. Around you, water splashes softly. Somewhere, someone is gently humming an old lullaby. You inhale, and the air smells like cedarwood and warm humanity. You're not doing everything right, but you're here. And for now, that's enough. You've survived the footwear gauntlet, folded your clothes into something vaguely respectable, and managed to secure a stool without being exiled. But now you face what may be the most quietly perilous moment of your entire visit. The Norin curtain. It doesn't seem like much, just a rectangle of cloth, usually dyed indigo with white characters or simple geometric shapes. It hangs like a sleepy guardian between the changing room and the bathing area, swaying softly with the movement of air. But make no mistake, this is a checkpoint, a threshold, and it has rules. You reach for the fabric to push it aside, but just before your fingers graze it, a man next to you glides through effortlessly. Not a ripple, not a tug. It's like the curtain wants him to pass. You try the same technique. Your knuckle catches the edge and the whole thing sways violently, slapping your arm like a disappointed schoolmaster. You freeze. The room does not. No one says anything, of course. That would be rude. But someone definitely exhales just a little louder than necessary. Message received. In Edo bathhouses, the Norin wasn't just decorative. It was directional, and it told stories. Its design indicated more than gender or temperature. Some patterns were inherited, passed down by bathhouse families like coats of arms. Others hinted at local legends or community jokes. If you paid attention, you could tell whether a bathhouse was welcoming, formal, flirtatious, or rigid, just from the way its Norin was hung. You didn't pay attention, but now you know. Once through, you're enveloped by a wave of warmth and scent. Wood, damp earth, the faint musk of yuzu peel floating in a bucket somewhere. The bathing chamber opens before you, a low-ceiling space of stone, wood, and steam. There's a main tub, large, deep, and gently steaming, set against the far wall and small washing stations along the sides. Everything glows with a golden haze, as if candlelight has been soaked into the air itself. And in the middle of this soft-lit harmony stands a tall man with a full-body dragon tattoo, rinsing his armpits with theatrical grace. You pretend not to look. Every movement here has intention. You notice how bathers approach the water? Not head-on, but sideways, almost deferentially. They dip a foot, test the heat, rinse again. No one plunges, no one splashes. This is not a swimming pool, it is in many ways closer to a shrine. One small boy attempts a cannonball. His father pulls him aside so smoothly that the child ends up bowing in apology before he even knows what he did. It's like social Aikido. And that curtain you clumsily slapped earlier? It's still moving, slowly. Just a gentle ripple. Like it's mocking you. Some scholars argue that the Norin served as a metaphorical cleansing. Passing through it meant shedding your outside self and preparing to enter a communal ritual. Others say it was purely practical, a way to trap heat and mark gendered spaces. But the way the bathers behave, the reverence in their pace, the stillness after they pass through, it's hard not to believe the former. A lesser-known tidbit comes from the diary of a traveling woodblock artist who swears that in one bathhouse he visited, the Norin was sprayed nightly with a blend of pine, orange peel, and vinegar. Not for disinfecting, but to ensure the threshold had its own scent, one distinct from the rest of the bath. Is that true? Historians still argue whether it was real practice or poetic license. Either way, it smells amazing in here. You notice now that the Norin separates more than rooms. It separates moods. On the other side was self-consciousness, cold feet, folded clothes, and expectations. On this side, it's warmth, slowness, and something like forgiveness. But you're not entirely safe yet, because before you can even think about entering that heavenly tub, you have to make a decision. The most deceptively complicated choice in the entire bathhouse experience. You have to choose your bucket. There are several. Some are round and squat, others tall and oval. Some are plain wood, others lacquered with symbols. There's one with a small crack along the rim, likely avoided by everyone except newcomers too nervous to notice. You pick it up. It's heavier than expected. You hold it like it might explode. The man next to you gives a nod. Not a friendly nod. A, let's see what you do with that kind of nod. You fill the bucket from the tap, carry it carefully back to your stool, and attempt your first rinse. Water sloshes everywhere. Your knee, the floor, your sole, everything gets doused. Your neighbor doesn't flinch, but his eyebrow does twitch. You try again. This time, smoother. In the Edo period, bath buckets were more than just tools. They were often brought from home, personalized, and even passed down in families. A well-aged bucket could show your heritage, your neighborhood, even your occupation. Some had family crests, others had market symbols. Yours has nothing. Just plain wood. Silent, anonymous. You like it that way. The bucket, the Norin, the slippers, they're all part of a delicate social dance. Everyone knows the steps, everyone but you. But that's okay. Because in this bathhouse, you can be corrected without being scolded. You can be noticed without being mocked. And you're beginning to sense that in a world obsessed with formality and face, this is one of the only places where mistakes are allowed to evaporate. Like steam. You adjust your stool. Pour one last bucket of warm water down your back. The sensation is pure relief. Like someone wrung out the whole day and replaced it with silence. And just beyond the rising steam, the curtain sways again, now less like a scolding elder and more like a tired friend saying, "You're learning." Now that you've survived the curtain and the bucket fiasco, and only mildly scandalized a few elderly men in the process, it's time to tackle the next rite of passage: washing. This may sound simple. You just scrub yourself and hop in the tub, right? Oh, no, no, no. In Edo-era bathhouses, there was a very specific choreography to washing, and it involved more social nuance than a tea ceremony conducted on a tightrope. You look around and try to mimic the locals. Everyone has their own rhythm. Scoop, pour, lather, rinse, repeat. But there's a subtle code beneath the movements. How much soap you use, how vigorously you scrub, whether you splash too far into someone else's airspace. It all matters. Your first mistake is the soap. You brought your own, of course. A small cake of modern lavender soap you were told would be authentic. It smells wonderful, but as soon as the scent hits the air, a man in the corner stops mid-scrub and raises his head. Slowly. The lavender is too strong. You've introduced foreign notes into what should be a harmonious sensory composition. It's like playing electric guitar at a flute recital. You switch to the plain, nondescript communal soap provided near the wall. It smells like rice water and humility. You sit back down and try to mimic the older man across from you. He scrubs his arms with deliberate care, like each stroke is part of an ancient ritual. He pauses after each rinse to let the water settle, then continues with the next limb. You, on the other hand, look like you're trying to put out a fire with your elbows. Somewhere, someone coughs. Not at you, of course, but near you. Loud enough to be heard. It's the bathhouse equivalent of a slow clap. The water trickles softly from a ladle in the next stall. Steam curls upward in loose ribbons. The sound of skin being gently scrubbed is strangely soothing. No talking. Just the hush of wet wood. A few deep sighs and the occasional splash. You're part of it now, awkwardly perhaps, but included nonetheless. Now, here's a strange little historical tidbit. In some districts of Edo, bathers were known to sing quietly while washing. Not opera, not folk ballads, just gentle rhythm-keeping hums or repetitive verses. The tunes were meant to keep time and set a pace for the washing process, like lullabies for your limbs. There are even scattered records of specific bathhouse songs passed down through generations, though most have been lost to time. Historians still argue whether these were local customs or more widespread traditions, with some suggesting that singing in a shared space may have been frowned upon in more formal establishments. You hum a little, quietly. No one throws a bucket at you. That feels like progress. Now comes the next step in the ritual, the back scrub. You try to reach, you really do. But your arm isn't quite flexible enough, and now you look like a cat stuck in reverse. Then salvation. A young man to your left gestures silently, offering his back scrubber, a long wooden tool with soft bristles. You hesitate, then nod gratefully. The exchange is wordless, like monks trading sacred scrolls. You scrub your back. It feels divine. You return the tool with a bow so deep your towel nearly slips. The man nods, satisfied. For one brief moment, you've done something right. This moment, this quiet cooperation, was one of the unspoken beauties of Edo bathhouses. Despite all the rules, or maybe because of them, there existed a gentle solidarity. You didn't need to talk. You just needed to be present, respectful, and open to correction. In this way, the bathhouse became a soft kind of classroom, where humility was the ticket in. And that soap? The strong, perfumed one you brought in? You notice it somehow vanished from your basket. No one took it. No one threw it away. It simply disappeared. Perhaps the Noren curtain absorbed it. Or maybe someone quietly replaced it with something more appropriate. The bathhouse provides and gently edits. Now that you're washed, properly scrubbed, and only mildly traumatized by your own lack of flexibility, it's time. You rise, step carefully over the wet floorboards, and approach the main tub. It looks like something carved from a single piece of stone, though it's actually wood, cedar darkened by decades of use. You bow slightly, not to anyone in particular, but to the space itself, and lower yourself in. The heat wraps around you instantly. Not aggressive, but deep, like your muscles are being whispered to by a sleepy volcano. Your breath slows, your shoulders drop. You are no longer just in a bath, you are in a shared dream. Around you, no one speaks. Not out of strictness, but out of agreement. A social pact. This silence is earned. You let the warmth seep into your joints, your bones, your worries. Your brain, which earlier today had opinions about everything from how to fold your coat to how to bow properly, goes quiet. And it's here in this hush that you realize something. All the rules, the rituals, the subtle corrections, they aren't meant to shame. They're meant to guide, to create a space where even the most chaotic soul, yes, that includes you, can become still. You close your eyes. The water hugs you like it remembers your name. And somewhere just outside the bathhouse, the Norrin curtain flutters again. This time, it feels like a wink. The bath holds you like a warm memory, and for a moment, time slides sideways. No pressure, no awkward rituals. Just heat and hush. But then, of course, someone stirs the water. A toe wiggles, a ripple forms, and suddenly the temperature war begins. You open one eye. The man to your right leans slightly, then dips his wooden ladle into the tub and pours hot water down his leg with all the ceremony of a Shinto priest. The temperature shifts by perhaps 1 degree, but it begins. Temperature etiquette in Edo-Era bathhouses is a subtle battlefield. There's no thermostat, no dial, no polite inquiry like, is this too warm for you? There's just movement, inference, and water diplomacy. You shift slightly to make room. The man on your left, a quiet, grizzled fellow with a towel balanced perfectly on his head, exhales through his nose. He wants the water cooler. You just know it. The tension between your shoulders starts to return, as if caught between two thermal ideologies, the heat purists and the lukewarm loyalists. Historians agree that bathhouse temperature was a matter of deep local identity. In Osaka, they liked it hot, like boil your regrets off. Hot. Edo bathhouses leaned a little milder, but even then, standards varied. A 10-minute walk could bring you from a bathhouse that gently poached you to one that merely simmered your doubts. Of course, this unspoken battle had rules. If you wanted the water hotter, you fetched boiling water from the side tap and poured it discreetly into the tub, slowly to avoid sudden convection currents. If you wanted it cooler, you didn't add cold water. That would be blasphemy. Instead, you left the lid off or sat very still, hoping your body temperature alone could influence the equilibrium. Passive-aggressive thermoregulation at its finest. You are, as usual, unaware of these rules. You stretch out and accidentally disturb the surface with a dramatic splash. Steam rises. Your ladle slips and drops a loud splash right near a towel-on-head guy. His eyes open, not wide, but meaningfully. The man to your right coughs softly, which is bathhouse code for, "This tub isn't a splash zone, my friend." You shrink an inch into the water. And yet, despite the unspoken judgments, there's something almost endearing about the shared bath. Here, people of all walks, farmers, merchants, apprentices, even low-ranking samurai, soak side by side. The bath ignores your status, but the etiquette? The etiquette sees everything. A fringe account from a traveling Dutch merchant in the 18th century describes Edo baths as peculiarly still, yet volatile, noting that the most frequent cause of tension was not nudity, but ladle usage. He apparently poured cold water directly into the tub to cool it, and was met with a silence so profound, he claims he heard the bamboo walls creak in judgment. Historians still argue whether this was an exaggeration or simply accurate emotional trauma. The man across from you adjusts his towel, still balanced perfectly. You decide to try the same. You place your towel on your head. It slides down instantly and flops into the water with a sad plop. No one reacts. Which is worse than laughter, honestly. But here's the quiet genius of it all. Nobody scolds you. No one kicks you out. They just let you learn. The bathhouse doesn't teach through words, it teaches through vibe. And you're beginning to catch it. To your left, someone stands. He bows slightly before exiting the tub, then scoops water from a nearby cistern to rinse his feet. You make a mental note. That's what you forgot earlier. The foot rinse. Of course. You shift slightly, trying to re-establish temperature neutrality. Maybe if you hold still enough, towel balanced just right, you can blend in. It works for about 10 seconds. Then the wooden ladle returns. A new bather enters. He's younger, louder, and clearly a known entity. People nod at him. He grins. He scoops hot water from the separate pot and adds it to the tub with gusto. Steam surges. The temperature rises. He closes his eyes with satisfaction and declares, "Ah, just right." There's a long pause. Towel on head guy clears his throat. One short, gravelly sound. The younger man grins sheepishly and mumbles something that sounds like an apology wrapped in bravado. He ladles a bit of the water out again and cools it with more grace this time. Negotiations concluded. Peace restored. This, too, is part of the rhythm. Small corrections, small concessions, and even smaller words. You wonder how many disagreements in the world could be resolved this way, soaking quietly in hot water until the anger floats away. No shouting, just gentle passive thermodynamics. You finally find a comfortable position. The water is hot but not scalding. The others seem at ease. You're breathing slowly now. The towel on your head stays in place. The ripple you made earlier has vanished, and with that, the temperature war, like all great bathhouse conflicts, fades without winners or lose. You're melting in the tub now, physically, emotionally, spiritually. The warmth has entered the marrow of your bones, and your thoughts are slow, syrupy things. For the first time all evening, you're not thinking about rules. You're just soaking until you notice the top knot. The man 2 seats down shifts slightly and adjusts his hair. A neatly maintained chanmage, that iconic shaved front, knotted back style associated with samurai and other Edo elites. It bobs gently as he lowers into the water, with a grace that says, "I've done this 10,000 times." You, meanwhile, are suddenly aware that your own hair, still damp, still untamed, is plastered awkwardly across your forehead like a wet broom. Not that you were trying to impress anyone, but still, you're in the presence of a hairstyle that once required government permission. See, in the Edo period, hair wasn't just fashion, it was class, status, message. And if you wore the wrong style, especially in the wrong place, you might as well have shown up wearing someone else's family crest. The chanmage signified a person of standing, a samurai, or at least someone employed by one. It was equal parts hairstyle and resume, but it came with rules. The knot had to be tied just right, oiled just so, and not too high or too low, unless you wanted to imply something unflattering about your career trajectory. There's an ongoing academic squabble about whether lower-ranking samurai were permitted to keep their chanmage intact inside more egalitarian bathhouses. Some say yes, it was a way to preserve honor, even naked. Others argue that once the clothes came off, all symbols of rank were supposed to vanish with them. Historians still argue whether the bath was truly a leveler or just a stage for subtler performances. The man with the top knot leans back and rests his head on the wood rim. He closes his eyes, letting the steam soften his profile into something mythic. You resist the urge to salute. Barely. Of course, not everyone wore a chanmage. Merchants often favored tied cloth headbands. Craftsmen kept it simple unless they were festival leaders, in which case their hair might resemble a lacquered sculpture. And commoners? They did what they could, often short-cropped or tucked under towels. The one thing you weren't supposed to do? Leave it unkempt. Guess what yours currently is? You try to slick it back, It falls forward again with all the grace of a sea cucumber. The bathhouse gods are clearly having a laugh. Suddenly across the tub, a young man lifts a hand and gestures, not at you, but at the chamaj. The man smiles. There's a short exchange, words too soft to catch, followed by a low chuckle. You wonder if they're commenting on the knot. Or maybe the oil used. Or maybe they're reminiscing about their first time in a bathhouse and how their own hair had stuck out at a weird angle like yours is now. You feel for just a moment a pang of connection, because in this place of quiet rules and silent rank, hair remains one of the few personal statements left intact. And yet, no one here mocks you for getting it wrong. You shift again and notice someone near the edge of the tub, methodically tying a small cloth around his head. It's more than a sweatband, it's a statement. I belong here, I know what I'm doing. You do not. But you decide to try anyway. You reach for your towel, twist it like you've seen others do, and place it gently across your forehead. The knot is lumpy, slightly crooked, and feels like it might slide off at any moment. But it's something. And strangely, no one laughs. One man nods once, imperceptibly like he's seen worse. The water swirls gently around you. Someone shifts, creating ripples. The shanmoj bobs again like a floating flag of discipline. You wonder how long it took him to learn the proper oil ratio. Here's a curious, little-known detail. Samurai were sometimes buried with their top knots, preserved in special envelopes or containers if the body couldn't be recovered. A way to honor rank, even in death. The knot wasn't just hair, it was history, devotion, pride. You try not to think about how your current hairstyle resembles a failed sea urchin. But despite it all, the humidity, the hierarchy, the quiet glances, you feel oddly accepted. As if this place has absorbed your awkwardness and decided to grant you temporary citizenship. There's no speech, no applause, just the hum of bodies unwinding. Steam hovers near the ceiling like lazy clouds, and you lean your head back, letting your eyes drift upward. The wood above you glistens with condensation. Somewhere water drips in slow rhythm. One drop every few seconds like a natural metronome for breathing. In, outside. In, outside. You close your eyes and let yourself float, not in the water, but in the mood of it. Warm, still, timeless. Hair or no hair. Knot or no knot. You're part of the scene now. And the man with the shanmoj? He opens one eye, glances at your towel crown, and smiles. Not a smirk, not mockery. Just a quiet gesture that says, you're doing fine. You've nearly found your groove now, water lapping softly at your chest, your impromptu towel crown still hanging on for dear life, and the quiet camaraderie of semi-naked strangers who have graciously chosen not to exile you. But don't get too comfortable, because now comes the hardest part of any bathhouse experience. Small talk. You hear it before you see it. Two men seated near the back of the tub, murmuring in low voices, exchanging a few phrases followed by the soft sound of laughter. Not loud, never loud, just enough to ripple the surface tension of the room. You try not to listen. You fail not to listen. This is where it gets tricky. Edo-era bathhouses weren't just for scrubbing and soaking. They were also buzzing social centers, each tub a soft-boiled forum where news, neighborhood gossip, and delicate shade were exchanged with the same care as a tea ceremony. And if you didn't know how to play the game? Well, better to keep your mouth shut and just nod in the right rhythm. The man beside you sneezes once, then sighs. That's your opening. You turn slightly and murmur, "Warm enough for you?" A harmless phrase, a classic conversation starter in the bath. He glances over, considers you, then grunts, somewhere between agreement and apathy. Progress. Now, small talk in Edo society was a layered thing. On the surface, it might seem casual, but beneath it, oh, it was strategic. Too forward and you'd be labeled rude. Too quiet and you were aloof. You had to hit that sweet spot. Just enough words to confirm you were a functioning adult, but not so many that people suspected you were selling something. Merchants would often use the bathhouse to casually float new prices, test business rumors, or even scout out deals. It was the Edo version of LinkedIn, if LinkedIn involved a lot more back hair and nobody wore pants. One mainstream historical account even describes how low-ranking samurai used the bathhouse as a space to gather public sentiment, an informal kind of eavesdropping to report back up the chain. Not espionage. Just warm listening. You shift slightly and let out a non-committal, trying to sound like you know what's being discussed. You don't, but the effort is noted. One of the older men across the tub gives you the briefest of nods, like a doorman letting you into a very exclusive, very steamy club. Now, not all bathhouse chatter was polite. There were taboos. You didn't speak of death, taxes, or politics, unless, of course, you wanted to be accidentally splashed during your next rinse. And never, ever comment on another bather's body. Not even positively. That was an unspoken law with consequences measured in shame. You glance at a man near the side wall, quietly adjusting his towel. He wears the telltale signs of a traveling craftsman. Broad hands, suntanned shoulders, a faint scar along one temple. He speaks softly with the man next to him, something about the fish market's prices being not entirely honest. You file that away. Not useful, but deeply atmospheric. There's a curious fringe anecdote from a bathhouse logbook in the Kanto region. Apparently, one overly talkative bather, an amateur poet, was politely requested to bathe during off hours after reciting an impromptu haiku about someone else's back moles. Historians still argue whether this story was real or a cautionary tale spread by the more introverted elders. Either way, point taken. You stay on topic. Water, weather, whispers. Just then, someone near the wall sneezes. Again. Now here's a fun bit of Edo-Era etiquette. In a bathhouse, sneezing could carry subtle meaning. A loud sneeze might signal disapproval, discomfort, or just a reminder that someone found the water too hot. A soft one? Probably just dust or polite allergy. And in rare cases, a sneeze was even seen as the body's honest reaction to a dishonest conversation, meaning someone in the room just lied. You glance sideways. No one reacts. Maybe it was just steam. Back to your new conversation partner. He leans forward slightly and says, "Rain coming tomorrow. Good for the sweet potatoes." You nod as if you've grown sweet potatoes all your life. You add a sage. "Too dry lately anyway." He exhales in agreement. The talk drifts to vegetables, then to the local shrine festival, and then, beautifully, miraculously, into silence again. You've done it. You've survived small talk without saying anything weird about rice yields or foot fungus. A win. And it's worth noting, the silence after a successful exchange is often more satisfying than the talk itself. It's as if everyone collectively agrees, that was enough. Well played. You lean back. The ceiling drips softly overhead. The scent of pine and warm skin fills the space. Someone is pouring a final ladle over their shoulders. You hear a quiet splash from the corner where someone exited the tub. There's no applause, no closing remarks. Just the soft, shared quiet of people who know when enough has been said. Maybe that's what makes the bathhouse special. It's not the heat. It's not even the clean skin. It's the rare chance to say little and be understood completely. Steam curls like lazy calligraphy around the room as you rest deeper into the warmth, your skin pruned, your muscles slack. You've navigated greetings, mastered slipper arrangements, avoided hair-based shame, and survived your first bathhouse conversation without offending an entire lineage. Not bad. But now your eyes catch on something else. Something quietly different. Across the tub, a man lowers himself into the water with careful grace. He's quiet, reserved, like everyone else. But etched across his skin are dark, winding tattoos, swirls of ink that peek out from his shoulders, stretch over his arms, and curl around his back. The mood shifts, not dramatically, but subtly. One or two heads turn. The chatter ceases. It's not hostility, it's attention. You're witnessing one of Edo's more complicated social rules. Tattoos, and not the modern beach vacation kind. These are irizumi, traditional, deeply symbolic, and often deeply stigmatized. During the Edo period, tattoos lived a strange dual life. In one context, they were punishment. Criminals were sometimes tattooed to mark their offenses, a form of permanent shame etched into the skin. But in another context, irizumi became an underground art worn by firemen, laborers, and sometimes gamblers or members of certain underground groups. The line between social outcast and silent protector blurred beneath the ink. The man across from you is quiet, respectful, and visibly marked. You watch as others subtly shift to create space, not aggressively but respectfully distant, like standing a few feet back from someone holding a live sparkler. Historians still argue whether these inked individuals were universally shunned or quietly respected in certain circles. Some bathhouses banned them outright. Others didn't, especially if the person came from the neighborhood or paid well. The rules? Fluid. Like the water you're soaking in. You glance down at your own arm, bare, pale, and unmarked, save for a mosquito bite you've been politely ignoring. You feel plain, but also safe, neutral. Ink in Edo was a commitment, and one that told a story whether you wanted it to or not. The tattooed man dips a ladle into the tub and pours it slowly over his shoulder. His posture is impeccable. His towel is folded with mathematical precision. He says nothing. No one challenges him, but the energy has shifted. You remember a strange historical tidbit. Certain tattoo designs like koi fish or peonies weren't just art. They were meant to invoke protection, strength, or even beauty in the afterlife. One recorded tale tells of a fireman who had a dragon tattooed across his back to protect his soul from being consumed by flames. Was it belief, bravado, or both? The man across from you shifts, revealing a cluster of waves and cherry blossoms etched along his ribs. You wonder what they mean. You wonder if you should be wondering at all. In modern parlance, you'd call this reading the room. But in the Edo bathhouse, it's more like feeling the water. Everyone adjusts, slightly. A few avert their eyes, not in shame, but in respect. Not all ink is created equal, and not every story belongs to the bathhouse chorus. You adjust your towel, still clinging to your forehead like a soggy crown, and try to appear unbothered. The tattooed man meets your eyes for a moment. You give the smallest, most diplomatic nod imaginable. He returns it, barely perceptible, and looks away. In bathhouse terms, that's a handshake, and a signed treaty all in one. But not all tattoos were so noble. Some were signs of punishment. A thief might receive a character on his arm. A repeat offender? One on the forehead. These weren't artistic, just blunt social warnings. Many were forcibly applied and carried for life, long after the crime was forgotten. And if such a person dared step into a communal bath, well, the water didn't always wash that away. That's what makes this moment strange. The man's tattoos are elegant, intentional, but still whispered to by an older suspicion. Everyone respects him. No one embraces him. You lean back, wondering if silence is part of his ritual too. A man rises from the water, gives a slight bow to no one in particular, and steps out. The tattooed man shifts to occupy more space. Gently, without claim. It's not dominance, it's gravity. You hear a quiet splash near the back. A small boy, maybe 6 or 7, asks a question, too loud for the mood. His grandfather, unflinching, replies softly, "Some men wear their lives on the outside." You look back to the man with the ink. He hasn't moved. Just soaking, just breathing. The bathhouse doesn't ban him. It doesn't welcome him. It just includes him, conditionally, quietly. That's the thing about social rules here. They don't shout. They hum. You shift your arms trying to imitate his calm. You fail. Your biceps jiggle slightly in protest. No matter, you're learning. Not everything about the bathhouse is meant to be comfortable. Some things are meant to remind you of the world outside. The choices we make, the stories we carry, the warmth we're still allowed to enter. The steam thickens for a moment, then thins again. A breeze sneaks through the slats. The tattooed man stands slowly, bows once, and exits. The ripple he leaves in the water fades slower than the man himself. The air feels quieter after he leaves, even though no one had spoken to him. The surface of the bath still glimmers with ripples from where he stepped out, and the water seems to exhale in relief, or maybe reverence. You shift slightly, resettling in your corner of the tub, now aware that even your breathing has tempo here. As the steam thickens once more, a subtle rustle comes from the side door. The women's hours are beginning soon. You watch as a pair of middle-aged women in soft yukata shuffle through the threshold, laughing quietly behind cupped hands, accompanied by an elderly bath attendant who carries towels and murmurs, something that makes them giggle. A wooden sign hangs just beside the door. Painted characters delicately warn men to finish up. This transition isn't just logistical, it's political. In Edo-era bathhouses, gendered bathing times weren't always as clear-cut as modern norms would suggest. Some public baths offered konyoku, mixed bathing, especially in rural areas. But in the cities like Edo, rules shifted gradually toward separation. Still, many women preferred the transitional period just before the official women-only time began, a sort of twilight hour when the steam held fewer stairs. And even during their own designated times, women weren't simply relaxing. The bathhouse became a theater of quiet power. While the men may have debated temperature or taxes, women's conversations often slipped deeper into family matters, emotional gossip, and occasional low-voiced confessions disguised as mundane talk about tofu vendors. You rise respectfully, wrap yourself in your towel, and make your way out of the tub. A woman waiting by the side raises an eyebrow, not unkindly, as you pass. You bow, too deep again, but at least you're consistent. As you retreat to the side benches to cool off, you hear the distinct tones of women's small talk. Lilting, quick, a bit more energetic than the men's version. Someone is laughing about a neighbor's new kitten. Another mentions that her sister's been using rice water on her hair. Someone else complains, gently, that her husband snores like a broken taiko drum. You smile. These exchanges aren't just chatter, they're currency. In Edo society, women often wielded influence subtly, within the home and merchant circles, and yes, here in the bathhouse. While men may have held legal titles, the women were managing relationships, matchmaking efforts, and market prices, often from behind a towel and a scoop of warm water. One lesser-known anecdote tells of a woman nicknamed Bathhouse Tengu, who operated a kind of informal information network through her daily visits to different sento. She gathered gossip, settled disputes, and even brokered marriages, all without ever leaving the steam. Was she real? Historians still argue whether she was one person, or a collection of local legends rolled into a single wet-robed myth. You sit at the edge now, drying slowly, listening. The women's talk isn't aggressive or pointed, but there's a confidence to it. Where the men carried silence like a shield, the women wield conversation like a fan. Gracefully, sometimes playfully, always controlled. They rarely raise their voices, but somehow manage to say twice as much. You shift your towel. The fabric sticks slightly from the damp. A woman nearby laughs too loudly, then catches herself and covers her mouth. No one scolds. The attendant just slides the bamboo door further closed, preserving both heat and privacy. This space, partitioned by wood and routine, still echoes with shared humanity. Steam doesn't care about gender. Water welcomes everyone. But the rituals that surround the bathhouse? Oh, they're deeply gendered, delicately coded, and fiercely observed. You hear someone mention that the neighborhood carpenter's wife is expecting. There's a flutter of excited whispers, questions about names, guesses about gender, brief murmurs about cravings. One woman says she's been eating plums every day. That means it's a girl. Everyone nods. Science may not agree, but tradition does. The women move through their routines with practiced elegance. One ties her towel so neatly it could pass for origami. Another folds hers into a perfect rectangle and places it under her neck before reclining. You've never seen such effortless coordination. And after watching men struggle with basic towel balance for an hour, it's frankly a bit intimidating. You reach for your robe. It clings like rice paper and your fingers fumble at the tie. Still, you manage. Progress. As you prepare to leave the inner chamber, you steal one last glance at the women beginning their soak. Their conversation fades behind you, soft and steady as rainfall on a quiet roof. The door slides closed behind you, leaving only the hum of water and the muffled joy of a world you're not meant to intrude upon, but are grateful to have glimpsed. Back in the changing area, the air is cooler. Your robe rustles as you step across the matting, your feet no longer making the uncertain squish of earlier. You've learned, adjusted, survived, mostly unscathed. You bow again toward the bathhouse door, not out of habit this time, but respect. And from the other side of the wall, a woman's voice rises, faint and clear. "Don't forget to rinse your feet, boys." You smirk. You won't. You're nearly dressed now, robe adjusted, towel folded just this side of decent, when a soft tune catches your ear. Not a song exactly, more like a lazy scale, drifting through the steam like incense. You follow the sound, stepping lightly past the changing room curtain, and there she is, the flute seller. She's sitting cross-legged near the towel bins, surrounded by a modest display of bamboo flutes, fans, and a few curious trinkets that defy simple description. Like that carved wooden charm that looks suspiciously like a turnip wearing a hat. She's not calling out. She doesn't need to. The sound of her flute does all the beckoning. You watch as a man finishes toweling off, approaches her, and without a word, trades a few coins for a flute. She hands it over like she's passing along a secret. Flute sellers were a common sight near Edo bathhouses, though seller may not be the best word. They were often entertainers, matchmakers, gossip brokers, or, depending on the neighborhood, something a little more flirtatious. But in all cases, they were observers, sitting at the edge of the steam world, listening, remembering. You approach more out of curiosity than intent. She nods once, acknowledging your presence without disrupting her tune. It's a gentle melody, simple and slow, the kind you could fall asleep to. Or confess your entire life story. She finishes a phrase, lowers the flute, and says softly, "You're new here." You nod, sheepish. She smiles, not mockingly, just amused. Your towel folds better when you breathe out first. You try it, it helps. She gestures to the collection of trinkets. You reach for a small fan, painted with a bathing carp that looks suspiciously judgmental. She says, "That one's for people who speak too fast." You grin. Good choice, then. A woman passing by chuckles. She's holding a pair of bath sandals and a bamboo comb. The flute seller winks, then shifts her attention to a small notebook at her side. She scribbles something. You can't see what. There's an old Edo saying that goes, "The bathhouse hears all but tells only to the flute." You begin to understand what that means. The flute seller isn't just a vendor. She's a sponge, a whisper archive, a walking newsletter that doesn't publish, just plays the headlines and melody. One popular fringe tale from the period speaks of a woman who sold flutes outside the famed Gofuku-yu bathhouse in central Edo. She never married but arranged 12 marriages. Never bathed there but could recite the washing order of any regular by memory. Some claimed she was clairvoyant. Others said she simply listened better than anyone else. Historians still argue whether she existed, or if she was a composite character made up by poets in need of a muse. Either way, this woman in front of you fits the mold perfectly. Her eyes are lined with soft creases that suggest decades of knowing smiles. Her fingers move with the calm of someone who waits for nothing but hears everything. You ask, "Do you play the same tune every day?" She shrugs. "Same bath, different stories." You purchase a small comb, not because you need it, but because it feels like the polite thing to do. She wraps it in rice paper, ties it with twine, and slips in a tiny card. You don't open it. Yet. As you step away, you hear her begin another melody. This one starts with a single high note that wavers in the steam. It's not sad. Not quite. More like nostalgia shaped into sound. Around you, bathers begin to drift back into the world, tying robes, checking the sky, yawning. The bathhouse is never truly loud, but now it's quieter than before. People have poured themselves out and are ready to be refilled by ordinary life. Chores, errands, lantern light walks. You're not quite ready. You sit for a moment on the low wooden bench by the exit, watching the flute seller. A few others join you, men and women, towel-headed children, even the grumpy old man from earlier whose eyebrows could cut glass. No one talks. We just sit, listening. And then the music fades. The flute lowers. The woman tucks it behind her ear like a hairpin. A final breeze stirs the Norn curtain, and the scent of cedar and yuzu floats past like the last sigh of the bathhouse. You rise, comb in hand, and take your leave. You glance back once. She's not looking at you, but somehow you know she's still listening. The sky outside the bathhouse has changed. It's still overcast, but the heavy gray has softened into something more silvery, like brushed steel left out in the rain. You feel the cool air kiss your damp skin as you step onto the wooden landing outside. But your journey isn't over. As you walk along the corridor toward the exit, you pass a side chamber, smaller, lower ceilinged, with warm laughter spilling out like steam. You peer inside. It's the family bathing room. Children splash in small barrels. Elders sit on wooden stools, their skin loose and glowing from decades of rituals. The rules here are different, softer, still governed by etiquette but shaded by affection. An old woman scoops water onto a little boy's back. He squeals. She hushes him with a smile. Across the room, a father washes his own father's feet, gently, deliberately. You sense that this room holds not just heat, but history. Bathhouses in Edo weren't simply places for individuals. They were hubs of generational memory. Children learned manners here. Elders reclaimed moments of tenderness, and families bonded in a way that few other settings allowed, stripped of ornaments, distracted only by the rhythm of water. Of course, even here, rules applied. One unspoken code. No splashing elders. It seems obvious, but kids are kids. And so the old man in the corner, whose top knot is more nostalgia than necessity, raises one wrinkled finger when a boy kicks too enthusiastically. The splash stops. No scolding. Just respect enforced with a gesture. You ease your way along the edge, careful not to interrupt. A small girl with soaked bangs stares at you curiously. She's holding a bright red gourd ladle, far too big for her hands, and she offers it to you with the solemnity of a priestess presenting an offering. You take it, bow slightly, return it. She grins, then goes back to pouring water onto her own toes. There's a fringe tale passed down in Edo barbershop gossip, which, let's be honest, was probably more reliable than the official court records. Some bathhouses had peeking rules, silent codes for where kids could look and when. Elders turned their backs, adults subtly shielded themselves, and children were taught early. Curiosity is natural, but modesty is mutual. Historians still argue whether this was an enforced guideline or simply a learned rhythm within communal spaces. Either way, it worked. Nobody shouted, nobody pointed, Everyone learned how to look without staring, how to notice without judging. You pass an alcove where a grandfather is slowly washing his granddaughter's hair. Her eyes are closed, trusting. His hands move carefully, evenly, like polishing an heirloom. You realize for some the bath isn't about getting clean. It's about taking care. There's even a term for this, oyakoko, filial piety. A cornerstone of Edo values, lived out not just in grand sacrifices, but in the quiet duty of scrubbing your mother's back, of pouring water over your father's feet without being asked. These weren't chores, they were love, ladled carefully. You find a spot by the door, not intruding, just observing. You sit beside a thin reed screen, watching the room breathe. Then a splash. A big one. A young boy, emboldened by his success with ladles, decides to test the surface tension of his entire bucket. Water flies. It lands, unfortunately, on the robe of an elderly woman near the entrance. The room freezes. No one shouts. No one gasps. But there's a pause thick as miso. Then the woman laughs, just once, and slowly lifts a ladle, dips it, and returns fire. Gently, just enough to baptize the boy's forehead. Laughter explodes. The tension breaks. A new rule is born. Splash only those willing to splash back. You smile. You understand now that bathhouse etiquette isn't a wall. It's a scaffold. A way of holding up relationships that might otherwise buckle under the pressure of daily life. Here, soaked in warmth and humility, people allow themselves to reset, to forgive, to play. As you rise, the little girl with the red ladle waves. You wave back. She's already forgotten you. That's okay. You step out from the family chamber, letting the wooden screen fall back into place behind you. The hallway is quiet again. Just the sound of dripping, of damp feet on old floorboards, and the occasional sniffle from someone who got a little too relaxed, too fast. You breathe in the scent of cedar and bathwater and wet straw mats one last time. The bathhouse isn't done with you yet, but it's given you something rare. A place where silence is welcome, where kindness speaks louder than correction, and where generations remember how to care, without words, without spectacle, just with warm water and time. You're just steps from the front now, robe slightly damp at the collar, skin humming like it's been sun-warmed from the inside out, when something peculiar catches your eye. A small group has gathered near the corner of the courtyard just beyond the stone steps. There's a low table, a shallow bucket filled with cold water, and something floating in it. Is that a cucumber? Yes, in fact it's several cucumbers. Some whole, some split. One carved into what looks suspiciously like a turtle. And beside the bucket, a pair of men are playing a slow-motion game that appears to involve catching the floating vegetables with flat bamboo paddles. The air is filled with quiet cheers and the occasional groan of effort. You've stumbled into the world of uesobi, bathhouse games. In most sento, once the bathing was done, it was perfectly acceptable, especially in the late afternoon, for guests to linger, to chat, to snack, and occasionally to partake in a bit of utterly pointless play. And the cucumber game? Well, it was one of the more beloved absurdities. The rules? Flexible at best. Each player attempts to maneuver their paddle under a cucumber without disturbing the water too much. Lift it, and you earn a point, or a laugh, depending on the skill shown. Drop it, you get splashed, or teased, or both. You watch as a man with a towel still balanced perfectly on his head, yes, that guy, expertly guides his paddle beneath a cucumber and flips it into the air. It lands with a triumphant plop in a waiting bucket. Applause, low, lazy, but genuine. There's a sweet ridiculousness to it all. Here are grown adults, some burly, some rail-thin, some clearly high-ranking in whatever guild they belong to, delicately fishing cucumbers out of a bucket like it's a national sport. A boy nearby is handed a paddle by his mother. He fumbles, tries, and manages to scoop a gourd-shaped cucumber. The onlookers cheer, he beams. It's a perfect 10. You're handed a paddle, of course you are. You take it like it's made of rice paper. Kneel beside the water. Choose your cucumber. There's one bobbing gently at the edge, suspiciously shaped like a cat, if that cat were also a vegetable and mildly waterlogged. You go for it, slow, steady, you succeed, and immediately drop it on your sandal. Laughter ripples, not cruel, just delighted. The woman who handed you the paddle claps gently. Beginner's blessing, she says. You're not sure what that means, but it sounds flattering. These games, while lighthearted, served a subtle function in Edo society. They let people unwind without the burden of performance. They weren't about winning. They were about participation. The joke. The moment. The tiny triumph of balancing a vegetable on water and pretending, just for a few minutes, that nothing else existed. There's even a fringe tale, barely a footnote in a single account from a regional magistrate, that a famous merchant once brokered an entire fish trading agreement over a game of cucumber scoop. The story claims he lost the match but gained an ally. Historians still argue whether the agreement actually happened, or if it was a fable told to encourage merchants to bathe more often. You play a second round. This time, success. Your cucumber wobbles, tips, but lands with a satisfying thunk into the winner's bowl. You bow. The group bows back. Someone offers you a slice, fresh, crisp, cooled by the water it floated in. You bite. It tastes faintly of salt and bathhouse cheer. And here's the magic. No one here knows your name. You're just the towel-folding, cucumber-fumbling guest who tried, failed, and tried again. And that's enough. You belong. Children dart between legs, still wrapped in damp towels, still giggling. An older woman peels a yuzu and shares segments with a neighbor. The bath may be over, but the spirit of the place lingers. You lean back against a wooden post, legs stretched out, paddle resting beside you. The sun has dipped just slightly, casting a soft amber light through the lattice. Somewhere a bamboo chime rattles gently in the breeze. You think maybe more places should end with games and cold cucumbers. Maybe that's how we'd solve more things. No shouting, no boasting, just slow reflexes, steady laughter, and one soggy gourd at a time. You eventually surrender the paddle and hands still cool from the cucumber water, and drift back inside to the drying room, where the mood is now unhurried, almost drowsy. Robes are being pulled on with languid motions, hair is being tied up with damp fingers, and the occasional yawn slips out unjudged. This is the last trial, drying off without creating a scene. You retrieve your towel, once neatly folded, now resembling a damp origami crane in distress. The drying area is lined with simple wooden benches and mirrors polished enough to reflect your general outline, if not your ego. Small baskets contain combs, toothpicks, and cotton cloths, and everyone moves with practiced stillness, like they're in a ballet choreographed by sleepy monks. Here, even towel etiquette has rules. You're not supposed to use the communal towel to dry your entire body. That's for padding. Gentle dabs. Anything more vigorous, and you risk entering the dangerous territory of enthusiastic toweling, a surefire way to earn side-eye from the drying veterans. You sit. Try to look inconspicuous. Unfold your towel as if you've done it 1,000 times. Pat the shoulders, the arms. You catch sight of yourself in the mirror and pause. You look peaceful, rumpled, yes. Pink around the edges. But there's something new there, a kind of calm that isn't performance. You've been steamed into serenity. Across from you, a man expertly folds his towel into a narrow strip, wrings it out without a splash, and drapes it over his shoulder like a minimalist sash. You attempt the same. Yours ends up shaped like a resigned eel. Still, effort counts. A child runs past, giggling, towel trailing like a superhero cape. No one scolds him. A nearby elder chuckles even as he adjusts his own robe with the same precision as a tea ceremony. This is the final moment where people adjust their public faces, transitioning from half-naked community to robe-wrapped individuals. Hair is combed, postures are straightened. The world outside awaits, and though it's not unwelcome, it is a contrast. In here, your value was measured by how well you listened, soaked, and respected the quiet. Outside, it's back to noise, obligations, and who knows what kind of sandals you'll step on metaphorically. As you stand, someone gestures to the towel bin, gently reminding you that towels go in folded, not flung. You comply. Yours resembles a damp accordion, but you press it smooth with both palms. Respectful, close enough. And now the sandals. You return to the entryway where your outside footwear waits like a final exam. They're still crooked. Of course they are. Someone has even left a little space around them, as if to say, we all noticed. You realign them slowly, bowing slightly, not out of obligation, but as an instinctive thank you. And here's a curious detail. Edo bathhouses were among the few places where it was socially acceptable to correct someone else's sandals. Quietly, without commentary. To help someone else save face without making them feel corrected. It was considered a small act of communal grace. Historians still debate whether this originated from Buddhist values of humility, or simply the collective survival instinct of a society that shared tubs. You slip your feet into your sandals. They're warm from the sunbeam creeping through the doorway. That simple warmth feels like a reward. As you rise, someone hands you a small square of paper. You turn it over. It's a drying cloth voucher. Good for one towel rental next time. A kind gesture, or a hint that they expect you'll be back. Either way, you tuck it into your sleeve like a lucky charm. One last glance at the mirror. You look not different exactly, but clarified, like the edges of your day have been softened. Behind you, the sounds of the bathhouse continue. Distant laughter, the drip of cooling water, the rhythmic sweep of someone cleaning the tiles. It feels like the building itself is sighing into evening. You step through the doorway into the open air, which hits your cheeks like a quiet gasp. Not cold, just awake. You adjust your robe. The wind tugs at the hem. Somewhere nearby, a neighbor beats a futon with a stick. A dog barks once, then curls back to sleep. You're clean, not just washed, but reset. And somehow, in a world full of noise and roles and responsibilities, this place taught you everything without saying a word. All through a towel, a ladle, and the quiet. You've left the inner sanctum, passed through layers of steam, silence, cucumber sports, and towel diplomacy, and now you're outside, sandals gently slapping the stone path that leads away from the bathhouse. The air has shifted again. Evening is folding down across the sky, soft as a futon being laid out by the breeze. You walk slowly, not because you're tired, though you are, but because rushing now would feel wrong. Like talking loudly in a library, or cutting in line at a temple offering. Your robe flutters softly around your legs. It's still a little damp at the cuffs, but the warmth from your bath clings to you like a protective aura. You're insulated from the world. For now. The street is quiet. Not empty, just gentle. A cart wheels past, its merchant humming a song about grilled sweet potatoes. A pair of boys, barefoot, chase each other in lazy spirals. From a window, someone's playing a shamisen, the notes bending like soft laughter through paper screens. You pass an alley where the scent of charcoal and soy sauce hangs like a flag. A shopkeeper fans skewers of eel, the smoke curling into perfect question marks. He sees you, nods, and says nothing. It's a bathhouse nod. A silent, I see your robe, I see your pace, I see your peace. The thing about leaving an Edo-Era bathhouse is that you carry part of it with you. Not the steam or the scent, though those linger, but the rhythm. The permission to slow down, to move like you belong. Even if you still haven't figured out which direction your sandals should point. You stop by a small wooden bench under a plum tree. The petals have started to fall and one lands directly on your knee. You consider brushing it off, then you don't. It belongs there now. As you sit, you pull out the little rice paper packet from the flute cellar. You'd nearly forgotten it in the warmth of everything. You unfold it slowly. Inside is a tiny wooden charm. It's carved like a folding stool, small, imperfect, just like the one you sat on earlier. There's no note, no explanation. You smile. It's a joke, clearly. A kind one. There's a term in Edo Japanese, iki. It doesn't translate easily. It's something like style, but not fashion. It's wit, but not sarcasm. It's grace with a hint of rebellion. The charm is iki. It's saying, we saw you. You struggled. You tried. That's the most graceful thing of all. There's a soft shuffle of steps nearby. An older man sits on the other end of the bench. He stretches out his legs, sighs, and lets his robe fall open just enough to show steam-softened skin. You sit in silence. Eventually, he says, "Good bath?" You nod. "Very." He squints toward the street. They don't make them like they used to. You're not sure if he means the bathhouses or the cucumbers, or maybe the steam itself, but you nod anyway. A long pause. Then he says, "You'll come back." It's not a question. You glance down at your robe, at the folded charm in your palm, at your now properly aligned sandals. "Yes," you say. "I think I already have." You stand, bow slightly. He doesn't return it, just waves you off with a flick of a finger. The walk home is quiet. The stars are starting to peek through the thinning clouds, like shy attendants behind a rice paper screen. And as you pass through the quiet streets of Edo, still wrapped in the softness of water and wood and whispered rules, you realize something. You've never felt more gently human. You arrive home just as the street lanterns begin to glow. Soft orbs of amber suspended above the narrow lanes, their light wobbling slightly in the breeze like flames trying to remember an old poem. You slide open the wooden door with quiet hands. The familiar creak greets you, not harsh, not scolding, just the sound of arrival. Inside, the tatami mats are cool under your feet. Your robe rustles as you kneel, reaching for the small basin of water kept near the entrance. One last rinse, out of habit now. Not because you need to, but because it feels right. The bathhouse etiquette has followed you home. You sit by the open window, the evening air rolling in, gentle and full of the world's quiet exhale. Somewhere nearby, a neighbor taps out futon dust. Somewhere farther, a dog lets out one last sleepy bark for the night. You unwrap the charm again, the tiny wooden stool still ridiculous, still perfect, and place it beside you on the windowsill. The bathhouse may be miles behind you, but the stillness it gave you, that you've kept. As you sit, the silence wraps around you like a second robe. The steam has faded, but your body remembers. The warmth isn't on your skin anymore, it's inside your bones, like the slow ember of a hearth fire long after the flames have gone. And here, with your hair still damp and your soul a few notches quieter, you begin to understand the most secret rule of all, that the bathhouse isn't just a place. It's a pace, a way of being, a gentle agreement with the world to stop, to soak, to soften. Outside, the wind stirs the Norin curtain at the tea shop across the street. Its edges flutter slightly, just like the one you smacked clumsily hours ago. You smile. You'd bow to it now if it wouldn't raise suspicion. You sip tea, barely warm, slightly bitter. The perfect end note. Tomorrow will come. You'll walk faster, think louder, stumble over modern things. But some small part of you will carry the bathhouse within, in how you fold your towel, how you place your sandals, how you look at someone when they're just trying to get it right. Because tonight you were part of something older than talk. Something steam-soaked and quietly shared, And that never really leaves you. Wind down 300 words. Let your body sink now. Let your shoulders drop and your breath stretch longer. Slower. There's nothing left to do tonight. Nothing to figure out. No rules to remember. The curtain has closed behind you. The sandals are lined up perfectly. The towel is folded. The water has gone still. And stillness is enough. Let your mind rest, like steam settling on warm wood. Let your thoughts drift like bathhouse stories. Half-remembered, soft-edged, pleasant in their detail, but no longer asking for attention. You are safe. You are held. In the warm hush of this moment, the world no longer needs anything from you. Listen to the quiet hum around you. Imagine the soft shuffle of feet on damp floorboards. A ladle dipping gently into warm water. A towel being wrung out with care. These sounds remain, even as the day fades. Your breath joins them. In, outside. In, outside. No need to shape it. Just let it happen. There are no lessons to repeat. No phrases to memorize. Just warmth. Just the comfort of knowing you were part of something simple and shared. And now the steam has lifted. The lamp outside your window glows softer. The world is quiet, and so are you. So